Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into introversion and specifically how it can be a real strength, especially when it comes to self-improvement.
Yeah, it's funny how introversion sometimes gets, I don't know, like a bad rap or something.
Yeah,
People think it's all about being shy or quiet, but
totally.
there's so much more to it than that.
So much more. I mean, did you know, for instance, that Rosa Parks, like the Rosa Parks, was actually considered an introvert?
It's true. A lot of people described her as soft-spoken,
Yeah.
even timid.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and I think it really challenges that stereotype.
Right. Because you always picture her as like this bold, really strong figure.
Yeah, leading marches and giving speeches.
Yeah, but to think of her as someone who actually preferred quiet reflection,
Right.
that's kind of mind-blowing.
It is, and it makes you realize that real strength can come from, well, it can come from the inside.
Right.
Like, according to some of the things we read, Rosa Parks, she got her strength from years of just observing,
Hmm.
quietly thinking about things, figuring out what she believed in.
Makes sense.
And it was that deep reflection that let her act, like, decisively,
Right.
when the time came. It wasn't just, an impulse. She knew what she had to do.
Wow. Yeah, and that's a powerful lesson for all of us, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we often we rush into things,
We do.
and we don't stop to think what do I really believe in?
Right. What are my values here?
Right.
Exactly. And this is actually a place where I think introverts often they shine.
Hmm.
They have that natural pull towards thinking things through,
Yeah.
which helps them become really self-aware.
Right. Right.
And if you think about it, self-awareness is like the key to making good decisions.
It's like that foundation.
Yeah, it's that foundation for making choices that actually make a difference.
So it's not just about thinking deeply, it's about understanding why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. And then using that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to guide your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's in your personal life or even how you impact the world.
Yeah, that reminds me of a time when.
Think about it. Like, let's say you've got a tough decision at work.
Hmm.
Do you just jump right in? Or do you take a second to think, okay, what really matters here?
Right, what are my priorities?
Exactly. Or even in a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Do you react without thinking? Or do you step back and try to understand, where the other person's coming from?
See their perspective.
Exactly.
And your own.
Yeah, and your own too.
Wow. So it sounds like reflection isn't about being passive, it's about getting clarity so you can act with purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's that foundation.
Like plotting your course before you set sail.
Right. Yeah, it's a great analogy.
And, that kind of leads us to another thing that introverts are really good at. Deep listening.
Oh, for sure. That's a big one.
Yeah. So we've talked about how thinking deeply helped shape Rosa Parks's actions. But how does deep listening fit into this whole idea of self-improvement?
Well, I think we have to start by understanding how introverts approach conversations. They tend to go for those deeper, more meaningful interactions. They're not usually the ones telling the loudest story at a party.
Right.
They're the ones really paying attention, absorbing not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it.
It's funny you say that because whenever I have a really deep conversation with someone,
Yeah,
I always feel so much closer to them afterward.
exactly. Because you feel heard, right?
Yeah, heard and understood.
And that's something introverts are really good at, giving that feeling to other people.
So it's like a gift they bring to their relationship.
It is. And that deep listening, it builds trust. It makes those bonds stronger. It's not about waiting for your turn to talk.
Right.
It's about actually engaging with what the other person's saying.
And feeling.
And feeling, yeah, that's a big part of it.
So how does all this tie back to introversion as a tool for self-improvement?
Well, think of it this way. Deep listening isn't just about understanding others. It's also about understanding yourself.
How so?
By listening to your own inner voice, paying attention to your thoughts and emotions.
Right.
You get a much better sense of who you are, what you need.
It's like you're holding up a mirror to your own soul.
Exactly.
So all these things we've been talking about, reflecting, listening deeply, being self-aware,
Yeah,
they all kind of connect, don't they?
they do. They really do. They're all part of the same, well,
Like different sides of the same coin.
exactly, the same coin.
Right.
And that coin is the power of introversion. And you know what? This brings us to something that often gets a bad rap. Solitude.
Solitude. It's funny because when I think of self-improvement, I usually think of being out in the world, facing challenges head on.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, but now I'm really curious. what role does solitude actually play in this whole thing?
That's a great question, and I think there's a lot of confusion around it. In a world that's constantly telling us to be outgoing, be social,
Be on all the time.
right? Solitude can seem, well, kind of negative.
Yeah, like there's something wrong with wanting to be alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for introverts, solitude isn't about isolation. It's a need.
A need.
It's how they recharge, how they process things, how they reconnect with themselves.
It's like their fuel.
It is. It's their fuel.
So it's more than just taking a break from everything. It's about like intentionally creating that space for yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so what happens in that space? Like what's so special about it?
Oh, all sorts of amazing things can happen. Our sources actually talk about 4 big benefits of solitude: increasing empathy, boosting productivity, enhancing creativity, and building mental toughness.
Wait, hold on. How can being alone make you more empathetic?
Think about it. When you step away from all those demands, the constant social stuff,
Right.
it gives you a chance to really understand your own emotions, your own needs. And that self-awareness actually makes you more sensitive to what other people are going through.
It's like you're clearing out all that mental clutter so you can actually focus on what matters, right?
That's a great way to put it.
And I guess that also explains the productivity boost. Fewer distractions equals more focus.
Exactly. Without all the noise and stimulation, introverts can really dive into their work, get into that flow state.
And what about the enhanced creativity? Is that also about like having fewer distractions?
It definitely helps, but it goes even deeper than that. Solitude gives your mind that space to wander, to make connections, to explore new ideas.
I see.
Think about all the artists, writers, musicians who get inspired when they're alone.
It's when the world quiets down that you can really hear your own thoughts, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so what about mental resilience? How does being alone make you mentally stronger?
Well, solitude gives you this safe space to process challenges, work through difficult emotions, and figure out how to cope. It's about building that inner strength, learning to rely on yourself.
So even if I'm not facing some huge life crisis, incorporating solitude into my routine can still be like a good thing.
Absolutely. It's about giving yourself that gift of quiet time.
Whether you're an introvert or not.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see that solitude isn't about shutting the world out. It's about like stepping back to get a clearer view.
A clearer view of yourself.
And to come back feeling refreshed and ready to go.
That's a great way to put it. And, this actually brings us to another really fascinating aspect of introversion: deep work.
Deep work.
Yeah. Have you heard of that term?
I think so. It's about like really focusing on something, right?
Exactly. It's the ability to concentrate intensely on those demanding tasks without distractions.
I can see how introverts would be good at that.
Oh, absolutely. They're already comfortable being alone with their thoughts, so blocking out distractions comes naturally to them.
So it's like a superpower for them.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And it's not just about productivity,
Right.
It's a key ingredient for making breakthroughs, for solving those really tough problems.
Right. And I guess it ties back to what we were talking about earlier with Rosa Parks.
Exactly. Remember, she was able to reflect deeply on her values and principles,
Yeah.
which allowed her to act with unwavering conviction.
Right. So that same ability to focus deeply can be applied to, well, anything, really.
Anything. Whether you're working on a creative project or trying to solve a technical challenge or even just working towards a personal goal.
It's about making that space and time to really engage with what you're doing.
That's what deep work is all about.
Wow, this is making me rethink my whole approach to work. I always thought multitasking was the way to go.
Oh yeah, multitasking can be a trap.
But now I'm wondering if I'm actually, sabotaging my own focus by trying to do too many things at once.
It's a common problem these days.
Yeah, it's like we're all so connected, it's hard to unplug.
It is, but it's important to remember that deep work, that real focused attention, that's where the magic happens.
It's like juggling 5 balls at once. You might look impressive for a bit, but you're going to drop something eventually.
Exactly. And that's where the power of deep work comes in. It's about quality over quantity, focusing on one thing at a time and giving yourself the space to get lost in it.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it now.
Good. And remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore when it comes to the power of introversion.
This has already been so insightful.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Maybe it would be good to take a minute to recap what we've learned so far.
Yeah, a refresher would be great. What have we covered about introversion as a tool for self-improvement?
Okay, so we started with the power of reflection. We saw how Rosa Parks' deep thinking helped her to act with conviction, and we talked about how reflection helps you understand your own actions. And then we moved on to deep listening, not just for understanding others, but for understanding yourself as well.
Right, like holding up that mirror to your soul.
Exactly. And then we explored solitude and all the benefits it brings.
Like increased empathy, better productivity, more creativity.
And mental toughness.
And finally, we talked about deep work and how introverts can use their natural focus to achieve amazing things.
Now, there's one more point I want to emphasize, something that wasn't explicitly mentioned in the stuff we read, but I think it's really crucial for understanding the power of introversion. It's about challenging those societal structures that often favor extroversion, you know?
What do you mean?
Think about it. From school to the workplace, there's this constant pressure to be outgoing, to be assertive, to be collaborating all the time.
Like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
Exactly. But what if we flipped that around and started recognizing the incredible value of introversion? What if we created spaces where those quieter strengths could shine, regardless of all the external pressure?
I love that. It's like celebrating those who might not be the loudest, but who have so much to offer in their own way.
That's what I'm talking about. And it's not just about introverts either. It's about recognizing that both introversion and extroversion have their own strengths.
Yeah.
It's not competition. It's about appreciating all the different ways people express themselves.
Absolutely, and finding ways to honor everyone's needs because we need those strengths to balance things out.
We do.
Can you imagine if everyone was always talking and no one was listening?
Oh, it would be chaos.
Right.
And probably not very productive.
So we need both.
Absolutely.
That's how we create a society that works.
It is.
So what can we do to challenge this? It's easy to talk about it, but how do we actually create a more inclusive environment?
Well,
maybe you need to schedule that alone time.
Yeah.
Find those meaningful conversations.
And if you're an extrovert, maybe you need to be more mindful of those who need quiet.
Right. Give them space to contribute.
It's about respect and understanding.
Absolutely.
Where everyone feels comfortable being themselves.
I love that.
So it's not about labels. It's about celebrating what makes each of us unique.
Well said.
And speaking of unique, you mentioned something earlier about introverts and creativity.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it touched on it briefly, but I think it deserves a deeper look.
Okay, I'm all ears. Introverts, they have this unique advantage when it comes to creativity. They're often drawn to that introspection, that deep thinking. And that can be like the perfect breeding ground for creativity.
It's like they have this built-in space to think and imagine without all the outside noise.
Exactly. And because they're not always looking for approval from others, they're more likely to follow their own vision.
Even if it's like different or unconventional?
Precisely. And that can lead to some really groundbreaking stuff.
So it's not just about having ideas. It's about having the guts to actually do something with them.
It is. Think about some of the most creative people throughout history. A lot of them were introverts.
Right.
People who weren't afraid to challenge the way things work.
To be different.
Exactly. They explored their own creativity and then shared it with the world.
That's pretty inspiring.
It is.
Makes me think about all those times I've held back on an idea because I was worried what people would think.
That's a common fear. But maybe it's time to let go of that.
To embrace that inner introvert.
Let those creative juices flow.
You know what? I think you're right.
And remember, creativity isn't just about art or music.
Right.
It's about problem solving, finding new ways of doing things.
So it can show up in any area of life.
Absolutely. So don't be afraid to tap into that introverted strength.
Wow. This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
I'm glad to hear it.
I'm starting to see introversion in a whole new way.
How so?
It's not a weakness. It's like this hidden superpower.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, embracing your introversion isn't about shutting yourself off from the world.
Right.
It's about knowing what you need.
Honoring your strengths.
Exactly.
And finding your own way to express yourself.
Because that quiet power can be just as strong as any loud voice.
Absolutely.
So for all the introverts out there, what's the one thing you want them to remember?
To embrace their quiet strengths.
Yes. Don't let anyone tell you that being introspective or thoughtful is a bad thing.
Those are amazing qualities.
They are.
And they're more important now than ever.
I couldn't agree more.
And to everyone listening, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, remember that the world needs what you have to offer.
We need all those unique perspectives.
So embrace what makes you you.
Yes.
Find your strengths
Yeah.
and let your talents shine.
Beautifully said.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the power of introversion.
It does.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this journey.
We hope you learned something new about yourself.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep